Popping out my chat. Looks like the title is still correct. I haven't changed that. Hey, we got Mikkel, this drunk Dane in the chat. Hello. I'm just gonna make a quick announcement tweet, and then we're getting started. There we go. Hey, Jim. I didn't fill up my water before I started. That was a mistake. That just means I'll have to go fill the pitcher up in a little while. Ooh, Odin is getting debug symbols now. That's cool. I've been wondering, I think I'm a little torn. There's a lot of things I want to do on 4coder. I've been thinking about how I want to do the timing on this, but at some point I want to make a few layers, like at least the APIs and minimal bindings to get it up and running. Maybe not the full framework that I have in C++, but the base of it at least, in like Odin, Rust, and maybe John's language when I can. I'm wondering how I'm going to do that and when I should work on that. But today I'll make a quick to-do list. Things I want to make today. So we're going to start with shift space right underscore. Then we're going to do upgrade the basic scope, moving commands to the default build. After that, I've been thinking about a couple things I might want to do. Let me look at my notes here. Project auto loading on save and on new project. Function list or list open in other views. Options. What else do I want to do? Bind the duplicate line and delete line commands. This drunk Dan asks, can you pass the project down the command line to 4coder and it will just load it at startup? Right now what you can do is if you launch 4coder in the directory that contains a project, it will load it on startup if you have it configured to do that. I could add that as a command line option. That's not too hard. Auto or command line project file. That way, if you don't want to set it up in your config, there's another way to do it. and it can work on any directory. I wanted to make a multi-paste command, not a paste next, but a multi-paste. I do not have multi-cursor yet. I was hoping to get to it this month, but I burned about 3 days at the beginning of the month on a different project that I didn't think was going to spill over, and then I burned another 3 days having more Mac bugs than I expected. So with that, I've lost about a week, and I don't think I'll get to it. It'll be next time. Okay, that's everything I've got in the notes. Some other things I've been thinking about are, and we don't necessarily have to get to all of this today, but I've been thinking about like switch conversions between switch and if else conversions between if between nested if and conversions between if else if and if or. Alright, those are some things I might want to see if I can do. Doubter. I think I've discussed this before where I'm not sure how I meant to pronounce that, and we've settled on do whatever I want. Hey Doubter, hey Radlab Gaming. The DB there throws me for a loop. Alright, so that's what I want to work on today. By the way, I'm running the newest version of 4coder, 4.024, where the fonts work like this now. So you come in here, look at your fonts, and you've got a list of the faces you've created, and you can go like, alright, well, what do we have on Hack? It's size 13. Is that big enough for you guys? Would you rather a 14 or a 16? What would you rather? And I guess 13 is actually the default size. I thought it was... Oh, maybe 13 is my default size when I launch through my batch file. I'm going to leave it right here unless anyone asks for bigger. But I can change that at runtime. When I run the build now... Uh-oh, I don't think that worked. Let me double check. Okay, yeah, it switched in console out. It's just bigger than I would like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this smaller. There. So you see now I can have two different faces of different sizes. And this one is using the smaller one. That way I can fit more build into my window like I'm used to, but use a bigger font for everything else. Alright. That's a little demo of the newest behavior. And now let's get to working on some of these commands. So shift space right underscore, I feel like that can just go in base commands. Fundamental editing command, right character. We're going to just put this right here. Right underscore. And this needs a custom doc inserts and underscore. Now this is going to work in basically the same way that does, so I'm going to make a quick wrapper. Right character parameter application links app. To writable character. Yeah, I'm gonna make that what I pass in. Okay. Uint 8t character, uint 32t length. Write character parameter, app character length. There we go. And I'm gonna guess that it also wants access to this. So now I get the input, which I can do without the buffer, and then there we go. Now let's see if I can do this. This drunk Dane, can you dynamically change font size at runtime? I don't have commands for that, but that should be on the to-do list, shouldn't it? I haven't actually gone and upgraded the behavior of the custom layer yet, but let me prioritize these and put that on there. Change font size. Command for changing font size. Okay. Okay. So, how does this one need to work? Write character parameter app _1. Everybody happy with that? You have a problem with it. Oh, right. So you want something more like this. Character equals there we go. And now I can go bind that real quick. So in order to do that, I have to go to the right place. It's not remapping anymore. It's now metagen, because I haven't put it in its own file yet. Okay, so I want to find where I'm binding shift space right now, because I just bind it right now to insert a space. I want this to be right underscore. Okay. Doubter says CMatrix doesn't work inside 4coder. I don't know what CMatrix is. Yeah, 4coder is not a terminal emulator yet. I've done some research on what that's going to take, and I was hoping that it would not be too much to get at least the output cleaned up this month, but even that's bigger than I expected. On Linux it's not so bad because the pseudo terminal stuff looks pretty clean, but on Windows I haven't been able to find an equivalent that isn't heinous. Yeah, so let me launch the debugger so I can try out the new command. Yeah, so I can go like work. This is going to take a little getting used to. Work in all. Yeah, it's weird. Work in all buffers. apply to, yeah, apply to all buffers. That's going to take some getting used to. If I could do it without pressing shift the whole time, that would be great, but I would have to introduce modal mode. If I had a mode, I would do like begin typing identifier, apply to all buffers, and then end typing identifier, and it would do that automatically for all the spaces I press. I'm going to think about that, but put it off for now. We'll call this done. Identifier typing mode ends on non-identifier character or escape, turns space into underscore. Alright, let's do commands for changing font size. I believe that could go in base command. Increase font size. Increases the size. Increase face of the face used by the current buffer. So I get access all, I get the view, I get the buffer. Alright, here's how the new API works. I need to get a, you know what, why don't I, oh, I didn't even prepare for, alright, I need a new incognito window. File, alright, here's the docs, types and functions, get face description. Alright, so here's the thing I need. Description. I wrote it just yesterday and I've already paged all this knowledge out of my head. But that's fine because I also set up the docs. So, I want the buffer's ID, so face ID. I want buffer get virus face ID, buffer cycle, get face description, get face ID. Face ID equals, here's the app, here's the buffer. So that gets me the face ID for the current buffer. Then I get the description for the face, and then I want to go to give me the face description. I want to set the point size to be larger. Description dot put size plus plus, and then I'm going to set or try modify face. That's the one I want. I don't care if it succeeds or fails, I'm just going to try. App, here's the face ID I care about, here's the modified description, and there we go. Yep, the plan is to basically support the underlying primitives that I need and then make a terminal emulation mode that a buffer can go into. It's basically this buffer is a terminal emulator. And then what I will do is, in addition to having basically all the operating system commands available, um, it'll have some built-in 4coder stuff. Like you can use a command, like all terminals have built-in commands. Mine will just have built-in commands specific to the fact that you're running in 4coder. So hold on, let me ask you a question. It sounds like you have an issue we can actually discuss. So you want Kruifa, wait, it's Doubter who needs it. Something about clearing. Explain to me exactly what you need. It sounds like you want a buffer that auto clears when you want to reuse it. Um, Spelling, I'm not hacking a mainframe. Nope. I think I am the mainframe at this point because I have all the 4coder code on my computer. Because it's not, I mean, the thing I'm getting at is it's not that hard. Like if you look at my automatic thing that runs things like this, if you want you output to buffer top, and then I don't know what your top command is, but if it were something like this, right, top is not recognized, then what you can do is just run it again, and it outputs the same buffer, clearing it before it runs again. So I'm a little confused what else you're asking about. Maybe this is more built-in, or I don't know. So that increases the size of the font. Decrease the size of the font goes right there. There we go. And now I want to ask, how do I want to trigger that? I don't have scroll wheel commands yet, or I would use that. That is used, so I don't want to use that. Yeah, those are the ones we'll use. So let me go to here. And what I want to do is global bind onto the mappings plus modifier control increase font. Hey, what's going on here? Increase face size. Decrease face size. Karifa, no, that's separate. So there's Alt-X, which just does an arbitrary long-form command, which is my way of basically making rare commands that I don't want to waste a key on. Alt-Z in the default bindings has always done this, where it asks for an output buffer and then a system command and runs it. Yours is a little cleaner than mine. So I know I saw you set up a similar one, but That's how mine works. And then you can Alt-Shift-Z to run the previous thing again, and it will just use the same buffer. And every time you run, basically in the API, as you know, you can just run a command line interface and output to a buffer. Every time you do that, it clears the buffer you're outputting to automatically, and it sends a hook too that lets you know that the buffer is being reset. It calls the hook. Like, let me show you. If you go to messages, you can see it's telling me that I ended the file top a couple of times and I've ended the file compilation. By ending file, what it means is it's simulating deleting the file, but it doesn't actually delete the buffer when you're doing that. It's just clearing the buffer, but it still sends the hook, sends the signal then as if it were being deleted, so you can do any last things you want as if the file got deleted. Don't know if that's related to what exactly you guys are talking about, because I don't totally follow, but hopefully maybe that is kind of helpful. Alright, so before I run the test, there's something I want to see, because I haven't actually done this yet. This is the first time I've added a few new commands. I want to run the site generator and then see bindings.html. So if I go to shift space, where is that? So I have a problem where I'm not printing spaces nicely, but well, what is this? Description missing. On shift space? Alright, so I gotta deal with something weird going on there. And what about under global, control plus control minus also has missing descriptions. Oh, that's because I haven't built this into anything yet. That's got to automatically run when I generate the site and when I run build super. Increases the font, the face, decreases the face. Yep, I got to work on that. Inserts an underscore. And that needs to have. Alright, let me make a note of that real quick. Bugs to fix. Site generator needs to run command parser space not printed pretty. There we go. Alright. Getting on with it. Can I actually increase the face size with a command now? That's the next question. There we go. So, Mickle, you've got it. You can now increase face size like that. Eventually it'll stop rendering as it gets bigger because I have a bug where it runs out of memory and doesn't actually reallocate correctly. And instead the bulletproofing takes over and it just doesn't crash, but doesn't render either. You can see it's still getting the right size, it's just not rendering. But I'll fix that. Very cool. Alright, auto load on save and on new project. Alright. So this is a few issues. I want to set up a test case for it first so that I can see the issue happening right away. So the problem goes like this. Let's open in my Win32 fonts location. Okay, this is good. I want to set to automatically run there for a little bit. Okay, so on launch it doesn't do anything now. Loading the project like that I don't think should cause anything, but if I alter this, I want it to automatically load. So I want to be able to do that and then see that the project is loaded. If no other project was already loaded, I think. Let me think about this. Maybe what I should do is when I load a project, yeah, I think I should switch it around. When I try to load a project, automatically save. Okay. So that's not a big problem. I just need to go to the project commands, and I need to see this is creating a new project. Project is set up. Change to the root directory, run an fkey command, exec project fkey command, load project. Now the question is, where is my command for save all dirty buffers? There we go. So before anything else, save all dirty buffers whenever I ask you to load a project. Now I can test that by going like this. I go to the project and I go, you know, I don't want the project to have Linux and Mac stuff sitting around. That's not necessary. And this should really be 3, not 2. Now go ahead and load the project. Now if I hit F3, it should work. Good. Okay, so that's working. Now the next question is, automatically load a new project, reload project command. Okay, so those are the things I actually want now that I think about it. So when I create a new project, which I set up on my first productivity acceleration stream, right here, set up new project, does everything it can to create the project. At the end, I'm just going to trigger load project. Okay. Now we can confirm that that works by going, let's make it, first I need to cd win32 fonts, mictor subfolder, alt-x new project, build target, sub.cpp output directory, put it out right here, binary output sub, and there we go. It looks like it loaded the project. Now I can do this. Okay, great. So that's working. Reload project command. So load project is up here, just hanging out, being useful, but a pain. A useful pain, because I don't want to always search for a project whenever I'm reloading. I only want to search when I haven't got one yet, right? So, reload current project. Needs a custom doc. If a project file has already been loaded, reloads the same file to useful when the project configuration is changed. That's definitely not a bug I've seen, Doubter. I'm not sure why that would be happening. So you're saying you'd have to send me the config file. It might be a bug with like if you have it on the first line and it's not expecting that, or some other, maybe the comment above it or something. I don't know. Send me the config file that has the bug, or a similar. If you don't want to share with me some kind of details of your personal whatever, then you can just try to make a test case that exhibits the same problem, and I'll see if it's still happening on 23 and 24. I used the Linux build just yesterday without that bug, so it would have to. If it is still present, it's probably sensitive to the exact format of your config file. Would be my guess. Reloads the same file. Okay, so the way this is supposed to work is this right here is searching terminated open project name. Don't stir if file. There's the call I care about, load project from config data. So what we want to do is something like this. We want to, but do I have project name, load project from config. So the only question is, can I get the original project config file somehow? I know I have the directory sitting around, current project. Current project. It must be in the default framework. Current project. Yes, there it is. So, yeah, I have a current project with a directory. So if the current project has been loaded, otherwise we haven't got a project to reload right now. Then append the directory like so. And then append onto that if, well, first of all, if name.stir name.size -1 size equals 0, or not char is slash, then append onto the name a slash, and append onto the name project.4coder, terminate with null, and finally I want to load config from data. That means I need to open the file and do a read out of it like this. Failed project.4coder file not found. Old configuration unchanged. Previous configuration left unchanged. That gives me a memory and a size. I need a partition. There we go. Alright, let me take a quick look at these. So this one is the one you're saying doesn't work, huh? It doesn't see... Oh, you're missing a semicolon right here. This should have a semicolon on it. So what's probably happening is your extensions aren't working at all. It doesn't read those in. And then it sees this semicolon here and goes ahead and skips all of this because it doesn't recognize it. And then this one will work. No problem. I think, I don't know, the build you have probably doesn't have this because I noticed that this wasn't working and fixed it at some point. I probably fixed it in build 23. But as of build 23, you should be able to get warnings when you have those syntax errors. Basically, the config files run through my C parser, so they follow the same syntax as C. But they don't have errors. Instead, they would just emit warnings onto the message buffer. So when you do upgrade from 22, you'll get warnings down here when you're, or up here. Eventually, I'll get the build notes into a separate buffer anyway. But you'll get all your messages in one spot and not have these build notes in the middle. But you'll either get your warnings up here or down here, depending on when you load your project, that tell you if there were any issues with the syntax of your configuration files. For some reason I didn't have that in there, even though like all the machinery was there to actually print messages out. I guess I just never went back in and added the warning messages that I meant to add. Okay, so I've got a partition. I'm gonna want a temp memory, am I not? Yeah. So if file read success, here's the app, here's the partition, here's the memory, here's the size, and here's the project name. Let me rename my name string to a project name. Alright, so I think that should work. Let's look for compilation errors real quick. We're good, okay. Let me go to MetaGen where the bindings exist. I need to pick a key for this. Load project doesn't have a key. You do it the slow way. Alright, I've used P, capital P. Control H goes to the home directory of the project. Project directory hack. Alright, I'm going to do capital H. Reload current project. Okay. So now what I should be able to do is load up project.4coder. Say, no, that really should have been a 2 the whole time. Load the project, come over here and run it and be like, well, there we go, 2 is working. And then I go, actually now that I think about it, that should be a 5. And then I can just go Control-Shift-H. Uh-oh. Control-Shift-H. And now if I hit 5, no. Alright, we got bugs in this one. So a couple things. Save all dirty buffers. And then, for coder. Come on, give me a list of like options, people. What's going on here? For coder. Project commands. wait, nope. Rebuild first. Not good. Okay. Pull up my project and I go, I think maybe that should be a 2. Load project, it saves it, and now when I hit 2, it runs. And then I go, you know, really, I think 5 would be better. Control Shift H. Current project is loaded, saves all dirty buffers, makes a new string, appends onto it, Win32 fonts, sees it's already got a slash, appends onto it that, and so now we're looking at Win32 fonts, project.4coder file does not equal 0. I grab a partition, I get the memory, and the memory size. Alright, quite good. Close the file, we have a read success. And so I load the project from config data. Okay, that looks like it's working. Okay, so it works. So the problem was just that I didn't save it before, and now I do, so it works. Sure does take it a long time to enumerate all the fonts, though. What's going on here? That's not a reasonable length of time. Test is already terminated, but I didn't see it. Yeah, I still don't see test. Hold on, let me kill this and run it again. Why don't I see any output now? It's slightly odd. I don't even see the test program running. Let me try just something else. This should definitely work. Control Shift H. Wait, what is this? Failed to make the CLI call. Interesting. Now why is this? Why did you fail to find that? Oh, am I not closing the file? No, I closed the file. Alright, something's not working, but I can't tell what. So I bet now F1 is still working, yeah. Compilation, but I don't see it compiling. Failed to make the CLI call. Why? Why did you fail? Alright. Let's try this again. Suppose I just load the project as is, and I run F4. Everything works fine. I run F5, and it works just fine. Suppose I go to the project, and I go 1, 2, and I say load the project again. Now 1 works, 2 works. Great. Now suppose I set this to 3, 4, and I hit Control Shift H. Now 3 fails. That's so weird. Okay. So I haven't totally cracked this, whatever the problem is. I get it. I get it. So the difference is up here, I'm not actually, that's not the project name. Oh, geez. Okay, so let me, so this is the original size. I append the thing onto it to get that, and then I restore it to there. Okay, I want to change something then. Load project from configuration data. Yeah, it correctly refers to that as the project dir. It's project name that's a misnomer. So we're going to call this project path. Project path. Alright, that should make it work more like the real one, where I'm not actually passing the name of the project, I'm passing in the path to the project. So if I load this, and then I run F3, I run F4, very good. Now I change that, that should be 1 and 2, and I go Control-Shift-H, skip the breakpoint. Now 1, 2. Alright, now it's working. Cool. Okay, so the next thing I want to do here... Oh, hold on, I got a good question. Why do you prefer everything in the same color? So I've discussed this a little bit, and it's a little bit, I mean, it's not, there's nothing to it really. So basically what it comes down to is, when I first started trying it out, it was based on the idea by Sean Barrett that you might be better off not doing very heavy coloring, because the idea of coloring to draw your attention to certain things might be a good idea, but the way coloring usually is applied is like on keywords, which is drawing your attention to things that are usually not that important. Like, the keywords are only important in the sense that they sort of give a shape to the code, but you don't necessarily need to be paying attention to them, so coloring them doesn't make any sense from that perspective. So I started programming with this for a while, and I found that it didn't really bother me. It was not better or worse for me to program with or without keywords being highlighted. So in that sense, it was not a complete confirmation of what he said. I guess I tend to I just tend to not pay that much attention to what the code I'm reading looks like, I guess. I don't know. For some reason, it doesn't bother me that much one way or the other if there is or isn't colors on the keywords. But having played with this for a while, then I started trying to make a new cool looking, like I was getting sick of programming with this too, because it was a little like, too bright on dark, and I needed something that worked better on my laptop when I was programming like outside, where I might have like a bad glare sometimes. And so like having a super dark background wasn't great, but having a white background, I didn't always like having that either. So I started working on a style, and I ended up on this just because it, I don't know, it's the one that I think I have that looks the coolest. And the fact that I have the flexibility to program with or without syntax highlighting means that I just use whichever one looks coolest. And I like this, and I don't think I could add colors to this and it would still look as cool. Yeah, once in a while I use your theme, Mickle. It's still in there. I mostly switch to this theme when I'm in the mood for colors and I want a white background. That's the two things this has. I never switch to this one. I'm sorry if you're seeing this, Zach, but this theme is ridiculous. I never switch to that. I switch to this when I'm recording videos because I think it looks pretty good, but I don't actually like it for myself. I switch to this a lot, but, well, not a lot, on occasion when I need to change stuff up. And I don't really use the Handmade Hero one either. But anyway. We can use this if you think it's better for the stream quality. That might be the case. I would expect fewer colors to be better, but also maybe the similarity of the colors is bad for compression because it decides to put them close to each other, sort of thing. Making a higher contrast might force it to not compress it that way, kind of a situation. I don't know how that works really. So I'll program this way. Okay, so yes, the next thing I want to work on is upgrading some stuff that I already have written just to a different layer. So let me go to experiments. Killrect I'm going to keep in here because it doesn't really work that well. Multi-line edit I'm going to keep in here because it's not ready yet. Scope Smart Editing Basics. Okay, so my goal here is to move this into a new file. 4coder scope commands.cpp. Alright. So this is not a build target. Let me get base commands, for instance. Drop in command pack. Scope commands.cpp. A set of commands and helpers relevant for scope level navigation and editing. When you say 2x time, you mean it takes twice as long or it's twice as fast? Because twice as fast would be superb. So the crying makes me think you mean it takes twice as long. Alright, so that's good. I want to That's going to lead to my bindings in experiments not being appropriate for experiments anymore. So let's see. Right. Multi-line edit, page up, page down, mid-blow increments. Those will stay wrapped up. Okay, surrounding scope, previous scope, next scope, placing scope, delete scope, absorb down. These ones I'm ready to move out. Metagen.cpp. These belong in code. Alright, and this is in the Mac one, so that's not supposed to be Alt, that's supposed to be Control. And you know, there's never any good way that I've been able to find to determine if it's okay to bind a certain thing on Mac. Like, the Alt key is usually available, but it's weirdly placed. Control and Command, about 1 in 10 of the things you try to use will just already be taken by something else, and you'll have to come back and edit this when you discover that. Okay. There we go. And instead of context, this is supposed to say mappings in this file. And if I go to the default include, we can see right here where I can just drop in this new command pack, scope command.cpp. There we go. So it should be now that the default bindings come along with the ability to do stuff like this. Sam and main.cdp, and so now I can do that, I can do that. This is all in the default stuff. The absorb down still needs to be upgraded, and I might do that in another productivity stream, is upgrade the statement parser that powers the absorb up or the absorb down, and maybe try to implement like a spill down kind of thing and an absorb up, spill up kind of thing, so that you can also absorb command or absorb statements up from you, and so that you can drop things out. Because like right now you can do this, and then I can hit undo to do this, but sometimes this action, this one, that one right there, you want to be able to do it as not an undo, but as a first, the action that you've just done. I haven't got that implemented yet. It wouldn't be too hard, but the way I implemented the thing originally was like, it tries to like just start from here and parse one statement out, and then goes from there. And the more correct full thing to do would be, as soon as you start invoking these commands, look across the whole thing and look at like a series of statements above and below it, and then use those. And then if you're doing from the inside to the outside, just parse out your statements here. I think we could make a thing that identifies statements, even if it doesn't know what's in them or understand them. It could identify statement level things at across one scope pretty well if I put my mind to it now. Yeah, I do like the Mac like alt character, like the alt the method of using alt to be Unicode stuff is kind of fun. What I don't like is the command and control keys are hugely overridden. Like the reason I don't like programming on Mac, even with 4coder now, is there's just so many key combos that you hit a thing and like your window is now being minimized, or you're going to the next full screen window over, or you're going back and forth and it's disappearing on you. There's so many ways to just accidentally completely change your focus by hitting a key combo. And when you're programming fast the way I do right now, there's a lot of like you're hitting keys a lot and you're hitting key combos a lot, and it's very hard to untrain yourself to not hit command right, which is, well, I think command right is okay. It's control right you can't hit, as that will cause you to completely lose the focus of the window, and there's just so many things that can cause that. That it's very distracting and hard to make progress without constantly hitting those things. But that's why I'm going to make a 4coder modal system at some point. Like the pressure on me is so high, it might be Vim, but I might just make like the 4coder modal, and that'll be separate from the Sublime and the Vim emulations that I've done, or that I will be doing at some point too, because I don't really like using Vim. I want something a little different, less modes and stuff. But I want to go like modify our list so that Mac isn't such a big problem. Yeah, that's the biggest one, is command space doesn't work. Now I could have done control space to be the thing that sets the mark, but that's different from all the other platforms, because now like when you're moving around, a lot of the navigation stuff involves holding control, and then when you get where you want to go you just keep holding that and press space. Now it's like you're holding command doing all these things, and then what do you do to set the mark? You could switch to holding control and hit space, but I ended up deciding to keep holding control, and I just made a / the mark, which is it's a little bit difficult to get used to, but eventually kind of like start picking it up. But still, Mac just ruins the Emacs style completely. You can't do it. So I'm gonna build a new default command map probably in an off month when I'm not doing 4coder full time, but when I'm just messing around with Mac. Because my Mac is what I use for all my recreational programming at home now. Since it's the lightest computer, I don't mind carrying it back and forth. Well, I already support the idea of, I'm on board for the idea of a native feel for the platform. But a part of the goal of 4coder is for my own self to have um, the flexibility to be on all platforms simultaneously without needing to memorize those native fields. Because the native feel to a platform is good when you spend all day on that platform. But when you spend all day on on all three platforms, the goal is for 4coder to be the thing that allows me to do that without having to like switch mental contexts when I'm going to a new platform, at least as little as possible. And so to support that, I want my bindings to be as similar as possible across platforms. So there's going to be a built-in binding that is modal so that it is the same across all platforms, and I'm going to get used to programming that way so that I can have that flexibility. Then I'll just have ones that are like the ones you expect on Linux and Mac, with like control being the thing that does all the useful stuff, and then the one on Mac will just be like, here's basically a copy of how Sublime works on Mac. Alright, so I have those, which is good. Bind the duplicate line and delete line commands. Yeah, maybe the thing I should be doing is programming on one operating system and then sending my builds elsewhere. Maybe that would be better. I haven't really invested any time into setting that up, but perhaps that's what I should be doing. The only other problem I have with that is the fact that then to test I still have to switch back and forth. And you know, really that wouldn't work for me anyway, because as I said, the thing I program on in my free time is the Mac. If I had Windows computers everywhere, and then I just use those for my recreational programming time as well, that would be different. But yeah, it's also kind of not about the ability to use all of them simultaneously right now, but the ability to migrate to a different operating system at a moment's notice is a part of that too. Basically, at some point, I won't be able to keep this Windows 7 machine anymore, and I'll be forced into making a Windows 10 like the only Windows I can use. At which point, I'll probably want to switch to a full-time Linux or probably a full-time Linux for my main machine at that point. And so part of this isn't just about cross-platform development now, but about perpetual flexibility for migration in the future. Okay, so for bind that, so that's just I need to find my duplicate line. So yeah, duplicate line and delete line are already here. I just need to bind those. So where should that go? That should go in the file here. Let's see. Little d already deletes a range. I could do Control-Shift-D to delete a line. Alt-D is already taken for the debug mode. So capital D to delete a line. Do I use L anywhere? So little l does line wrapping. Big L is not used. Okay, that's what I'll do. Big D, delete line. Big L, duplicate line. Alright. Big D, big L, command, command. Alright, so now I should be able to do that. Cool. And that. Sweet. Looking good. We're making, since I'm not doing complicated parsing and code gen this time, I'm making great progress. I'll be done in the 3 hours that I was hoping for, it looks like. So getting back on the, I use Safari on Mac, and getting back on the topic of Mac key combos on Mac, things are also weird because like it's inconsistent even to the point of it's not just like all the control combos go to all the control combos go to a particular like if it was like all the controls are now commands and all the alts are now controls, then the only annoying thing there is that command is in the position where alt is on the keyboard, which by the way, like the ergonomics of the Mac keyboard is actually horrible. Like at least the one on my Mac, it's like you're trying to hold down, let me pop it up just so I can look at it. You're trying to, like, if you're doing like control in a thing, the control is only on the left hand side, so you can't hold the control on the right hand side like you can normally and then hit something with your left hand. So if it's on the left side of the keyboard, like um, control, I'm forgetting some things that you can do with control right now. But the point is, you can't hold control and hit a key very easily if it's on the left side without like twisting your hand in horrible ways. And then there's other weird things like on all other operating systems, Alt Tab does the switching, but it's Command Tab that does the switching on Mac. And then there's the problem that it's switched because you're used to doing Control Copy, where Control is the thing that's farthest left on the bottom row, but Command is all the way in here, so you're like bending your thumb in all the time to do the common stuff. It's actually, I don't know why people think that they're great. It's also, the keyboard is like random letters will just get sticky or like not responsive for a day. It's actually like the worst of my computers. Even with Windows 10 on there. Well, now the Windows 10 computer has a lot of problems too. The trackpad on that's basically unusable. You can't do anything with it. Dan Golf asks, I didn't know 4coder rearranges indentation every time you type a character. Is that tweakable? So what's happening when you watch me write code is I'm using a feature called virtual whitespace. And what I'm doing right now is I've turned on the whitespace highlighter. So all of these blue rectangles here represent spaces and new lines. And you can see there is actually no whitespace shown in here. And that's because 4coder has virtualized out all of the whitespace that leads every line in my file, and then it just automatically draws the line at the correctly indented position for my style. Now, if I turn that off, then it's back to being a standard text file where there is actually white space there, and the white space really is there in the text file. It's just 4coder virtualizes it out when virtual white space is on, which leads to it doing things like when the line wrap happens, as you can see up here, the lines are wrapping. It indents the line wrap as if it were code indented. But if I were to turn off line wrapping and I turned off virtual whitespace, you would see that those lines are actually just long lines with no breaks in them. Yeah, so showing white spaces is available. Everyone can turn that on. I'll show you how to do it real quick. The default combo for it is Control-Shift question mark. If I go to here real quick, let's look up, the name of the command is toggle show whitespace, and if you look at your theme, whitespace highlight, you can set this in the theme file or right here, but if you set it right here it won't get saved between runs. You can just set the color that highlights the whitespace. It's part of your theme. So yeah, anyway, point is, this is toggleable, this idea that it automatically ignores the real white space and just shows you the thing you want to see. I use it because it means I never have to spend a single second hitting an indent key. Like, it's not just normally in an editor like Emacs or whatever, you have a command that's like auto indent this range and then it fixes the indentation. I don't even have to press that when I have this on. It always, the only downside is like you have to get used to like your code moving around like this as you insert keys, but once you're used to that, you can type stuff in and never stop to lay things out once, and it's kind of neat. So, what's next on my to-do list? Do I still have a to-do.txt? I thought I got rid of this. I need to delete this because it's totally out of date. Or at least reorganize it. Also, why is it being treated as code? That's unusual. But anyway, scratch. Doubter asks, is this stuff configurable, or have I considered making it configurable? The plan is that all of the virtual whitespace and actual indentation, the difference being virtual whitespace is just a presentation thing, and the actual indentation can be completely different. And the plan is to make them both configurable. Now, the actual indentation already is. It's just a C file, C++ file here in the custom layer. So you could, if you wanted, just write your own indenter code and ignore my indenter code. But this is the code that's responsible for indenting the actual text of your file. And it's a little bit configurable, but not very configurable. Like, you can kind of like choose whether it uses tabs or spaces, and you can choose the width of the, if it's using spaces, how many spaces it uses, you can choose that. And that's about it. Right, so default indent flags, you can set this to, I forget the name of the flag, but there's a flag for using tabs instead of spaces, and then you can set this if you're using spaces to like 2 or 3 or 1 or whatever you want. For virtual whitespace, there's no configurations right now. It just, you either have it the way it is or you don't have it at all, which I know is not superb, but the problem is it's such a brittle piece of code that when I first wrote it, I was basically like doing whatever it took to get the thing working, and what I ended up having was it works, but it's completely like unmodifiable. Every time I go in there and change one thing, the whole thing crumbles and takes like a build or two to get back into a completely crash-free state again. And so I just don't even bother touching it anymore. The plan is basically what I've done now is having gone through the process of making a bad one and having it sit there, I've come up with a solution, and a part of that solution is a part of the new algorithms that I discuss once in a while that it doesn't look like I'll get to this month. But the new algorithms basically allow for arbitrary programming of these things to be possible, because instead of having basically the mistake I made was to assume that the way you would customize this was by making something that like makes a call, and then that call can either return and say, I'm done, I've laid out your file, or it can return and say, hey, I need more information about how you want me to lay this line out. And then you can prepare that information and call it again with the new information. And the problem is that's at least as bad as callbacks, as it turns out. It's abstraction by control flow, which is or by like code semantics stuff, and it's just a bad plan. So the new plan is that you basically get a data structure that's a big array of like, here's all the things you need to answer. Like I need an answer for where to do the indentation and the wrapping for all of these lines, and go, and then you fill out the data for the whole thing and pass it back to it and say, here's the way to indent and wrap all this. You finish the job now, and then it does the rest of the layout. And that way there's no brittleness. It's just one call, fills out an array, and then return that array, and then use that to finish the problem. Anyway, now that we've gone over that stuff, multi-paste. Okay, so this is interesting. I think this would go under base commands. Paste next. No? Paste? Base commands doesn't have copy paste? Weird. Where do I find that then? Paste next. Wait, why does that show up 3 times? Oh, it's showing up 3 times on the same line. Okay, good. Clipboard, there's a clipboard. Okay. Alright, let me bring the clipboard over here. Paste next. Now, why is there a clipboard? Why isn't it just in base commands, I wonder? Maybe I had a good reason when I was organizing it. Okay, so copy, cut, paste, paste next. So what I want to do today is a sort of multi-paste, which would, yeah, I'm not sure the best way to do this interface yet. It's kind of experimental. Maybe I shouldn't put it in the public section. Maybe I should put this under the experimental section for now, just to give it a chance to mature before I share it. Write explicit enum values and experimental multi-pasting thing. Multi-paste. Now the basic the basic idea of multi-paste is I have a clipboard with multiple stages on it, and right now you can do paste and paste next. I want something that can do the paste of multiple multiple stages at once. There's two ways I can imagine setting that up. Yeah, you know what, actually I'm going to take a minute because there's an interesting conversation going on in the chat that I'd like to ask a question about. So I have this problem that I would like to solve by the end of the month that I don't have a single idea of how to solve. And maybe someone who's not using the English US layout that's like ubiquitous, so that I have the problem that most users don't complain about the problems in the default bindings because they are using the same keyboard I'm using, and so they don't actually have any problems with the bindings. But other people do have these problems, and I'd like to fix that. I'd like to have a thing where they have good bindings too, and there's a couple problems. If I use key codes directly instead of like ASCII, instead of character encodings, then I run into several problems. One is the entire there's like a conflict between. Let me pull this up and explain the problem. There's a conflict between how you bind things and when they're modified versus not. Then, like, in other words, suppose you want to do a thing that says like control plus the key, I don't know what it is, like 35, and let's just pretend, since I don't have any of this memorized, that this is the P key on the English US layout, right? So if I want control P to be split panel, then I would use key 35 instead of P, and that way on any other keyboard it would still be the same position on the keyboard for everybody. But the problem with that is, suppose I am implementing like a Vim style thing where I don't want to have this be insert P, and so I do, okay, on key 35 I want to like, I don't know, do thing. So this is like split view, split panel, and this one is like write character. Well, there's a couple of problems. Key 35 might not write a character on every single keyboard layout. Furthermore, I might want to be doing a Vim thing where this does a command that's like, this does the split panel, and this does like split panel horizontal or something, right? And now I have the problem that if I want to also support like a thing that's like, look, if the key would have entered a P, then insert. Now you can't do this. You can't really mix these because you've assigned two different names to these things, like write character. You've assigned two different names to these things, or two different meanings to P, and it has to pick one. And so that's a problem, which means I can't really have a thing that mixes key codes with their translated input. If I can't mix with their translated input, then I'm not sure how I would ever do a thing where it's like, in this mode, write character, I have to, in addition to having this key, also accompany with it the text that would have been inserted if I did translate it to that, so that when I do write character I can get the right thing. But in addition to that, it has the second problem that now the key combos, there's no good way to talk about what the key combos are, because like, if this is how I have to refer to P, then um, then in order to make my own key combos, I have to look these things up. And an additional problem on top of that is that in the current system, shift is a whole other thing. So not only would this have to be right character, but this would also have to be right character. And if I bind both of these to right character when this is a key that doesn't insert characters, I've just wasted a key combo that on some keyboards might have been actually useful to do something else. So the idea of not using key codes is basically to say I want to be able to do translate and give me the translated version. If it's anything other, that way if it's anything other than a like non-insertable character, I can detect that right away, because insertable characters will always come back to me with insertable text. If it's not insertable, then I'll get a 0 there and know that this isn't something that I can insert as text, but it has its secondary key code that tells me the thing. Doubter, you're saying, why couldn't I do this, right? But the point is, it's not about, what if I, the user, want to specify this as one keyboard handler? Unless you're saying a handler, you really either using one handler or the other. But okay, so the goal here is to make people who can rebind these things don't really have a problem. The problem is to make one data structure that allows the key bindings to work for everybody. If you have to have access to the custom code for this to work, then it really doesn't matter. You just write your own bindings. The problem is if I want to make a setup that works across all keyboards without having to rewrite anything, so that they don't need to, so that it works even if they don't have the custom layer. Now, if I have the other problem is I can't really encode both of these and then switch on both of them. This is what I was trying to say earlier. If I have a P and key 35, I can't also bind by saying if it's a P do this, if it's a key 35 do that. Because if one event can be both, then in this situation I don't know which one I need to do. Now I could say that there's only one or the other, and I could even let the user decide whether they're using this one or that one. But even if I say, alright, user, you can use this one or that one, what do I, when I ship the default bindings, what do I do? Do I use this because that way it'll work for everyone the same way? And if I do that, what happens when on certain keyboards, key 35, let's suppose key 35 on my keyboard is like tick mark, right? So I don't care if it gets used for something ridiculous because I never insert that. So on my keyboard, key 35 would go to this, and P would go to writing a character. But on someone else's keyboard, maybe it's not key, maybe it's something important to them like exclamation point, right, is in the same position. And so now key 35 splits a panel, but for them they needed that to actually use the right character functionality. But I had to pick one or the other, and so what's the rule for how that works? You can't, I don't see how I could mix these. So if I'm picking one or the other, and I pick this one, then I have the problem that I'm basically going to have to map all of the keys that on my keyboard insert characters to doing the right character. And then if you needed a different key to insert a character, you are out of luck. So what I would rather have, that I think would solve this problem, is I'd rather be able to say, when I'm generating the key bindings, I want to alter the map then based on what map the user has, but I don't know of a way to get a data structure that just explains to me the mapping. of these things. But if I could, what it would be is it would be you bind things like split panel. This way you can still use the key codes that work for your keyboard. And then you can have just something that's like map translation, and then I say like translate on the context in US to user keyboard, right? And so what it would do then is it would, based on the fact that it sees this, be able to go, okay, so whatever P is, translate that to its key code, and then translate that to the input we expect to see when the same key code is pressed on this keyboard. Then these are all preserved. Then the thing that could go wrong is if I had like something like this, and for some crazy reason the left key, like this is why it's not actually a problem, but if the keys on my English US layout that don't insert characters for some reason did, because the nice thing about the English US layout is there's no dead keys, there's no like multi-key inputs, there's none of that, which means that all of the keys that insert characters in this particular layout, or the keys that don't in this layout insert anything, would also not insert anything in any other layouts. But there are some layouts where like the key where my P key is might not insert anything for that layout. It might be a dead key that only is a part of a combo that maybe you want the combo to work, but you don't want it to try to insert the character right away when you hit the thing in that case. But the only reason I can't set up a system like this is because I don't know how to get data structures that describe these layouts from the operating system or from anywhere. Otherwise, I think I could hack together the rest of it to make it work for everybody. I might be wrong, but yeah, I think it would be possible. I'm not sure what exactly I'm looking at, or what is exactly this supposed to be, like switch key handler 1, switch key handler until released 1. I don't know what this means. Nine, 10, 3, 4, command close, insert characters, Unicode. Yeah, I don't know what this means. I mean, this can't be is this a key code? Is this a key? Is this, I don't know. I see. Yeah, at some point I'll have some support for something like this, but this would completely change. Doing all of this would completely change the way things have to work right now, and it's not quite there yet. Yeah, see, Jim has the exact idea of what I'm talking about. So you're saying he used key codes and asked Windows what they were on the connected keyboard. Yeah, that's the kind of thing I want, which is the ability to either, from the operating system, get a data structure that's just like, here's your layout. Yeah, I might look into that, what you're talking about, Jim, because that sounds pretty close to what I would need. Because I could build a default, like, baked-in map that does the English US stuff, which is the base from which I would do this hack, and then I could remap everything automatically if I had a way to ask for the linkage between key codes and um, key like values, character values on a particular keyboard. Which would be perfect. Because as you say, then I could make the in-app, like the in-app documentation kind of thing, correct for everybody. Alright, so I'm going to set that down for now because it's a bit of a gross and nasty problem. And we'll get back to working on multi-paste. So there's two ways I can make multi-paste work. I can either query for the user how many stages they want to paste, or I can make a thing where you do the first multi-paste and then each additional multi-paste that you do after that. I like that. So it'd be very similar to paste next, but it wouldn't replace. Okay, so I just need paste next. It'll look kind of like this. Access open clipboard count. Get active view. Rewrite, paste. Next rewrite equals rewrite paste. Paste index. Clipboard index, paste index, length, clipboard index, get the memory, get the buffer, get the range, oops, max, insert at max, Is there something like Shift Q, but for the current selection by default inside 4coder? I don't know what Shift Q does. I don't know Shift Q. What? Yeah, you have to explain what you mean by you'll have to explain to me what you mean by. Is there something like Shift Q? I don't know what you're referring to. So control, you're talking about this, where I can start replacing the word underneath the cursor? Ah, that's a good idea. I think I've actually thought about doing that before. Let me put that in there. Query replace from in range string in selection. List all locations string in selection. No, there's nothing like that. Okay, so I append a new line character if paste index does not equal 0 anyway. I do that. And then we want to get the range. I paste it right here without replacing the previous thing, and I set the cursor to the location. Oh, I guess that'll work out. Okay, so yeah, that's fine. Let's do that. Don't need that after all. Set mark to there +1. There we go. Alright, so Control V does paste. Control Shift V does next paste. What does Alt V do? Virtual whitespace. Okay, I don't want to get too close to that. What else is taken? M does all the build stuff and swap cursor mark. Here's paste, toggle virtual whitespace, paste next. B doesn't do anything right now. Control B toggles the file bar. Oh, Alt B, right. So up here, Alt B toggles the file bar. We're going to take Control B, because it's right next to V. It's perfect. Modifier control.
multi-paste. Why won't it autocomplete to that? Multi-paste. There you go. Must have been spelling it incorrectly. Doop. Not really adding it yet, just experimental for now. Sorry, that should be context in this context, if you don't mind the pun. And now, I want to test it, so I'm going to go back to data test basic CPP, and I'm just going to copy a couple of things. So, copy you, copy you, copy you, copy you. Yes, this file is like filled up with weird random nonsense that I added for testing various things over time. That way I know that when I'm loading it, I'm testing a bunch of different things being able to load and parse. There we go. Alright, that should do it. Scratch, Control B, B, B. I feel like that isn't pasting everything I would want. It's missing the last character. Okay. Multi-paste. So multi-paste, when you go to write the thing, stir len plus 1. Okay. So the way multi-paste works, if I've done this correctly, is if we have anything to paste at all, it gets the active view and sees, does the active view, has it already done a paste? If it hasn't, it does a regular paste. Otherwise, just like with paste next, it goes ahead and reads what's the next thing it should paste. It also does this nonsense here that I need to clean up someday. But it figures out what's the next thing to paste on the multi-stage clipboard. It gets that thing, and then if it can fit it in memory, it writes out a new line and the next string on the clipboard, and that way you can copy multiple things and then paste them all by just without having to go like the triangle number. Because right now, if you want to do multi-stage paste, what you have to do is be like boom, 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 and so on, right? And so it takes one key press here, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. It keeps taking more and more time to do each one that you would do. So if you're copying from 5 different locations and pasting to one, like 5 different spots on a page to one spot on another page, it takes you like 5 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1 key combos. With this, the idea is that it'll only take you 5. So hopefully that makes sense. And that's not going to be shipped on anything but the power build right now, since I'm still testing out the interface and seeing if I like it this way. Let me say I'm done with this. Fored code. Fored data. Daughter, what about holding down Control B and using key up and key down to navigate the multi-paste buffer? I might be able to do something kind of like that. I could do Control Shift B, and then you cycle up and down through to get the different things rather than Control Shift V to go down, 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 down. That would still be as bad as Control Shift V for the purpose I'm trying to solve now. But it would have the advantage that if you pass the one you want, that would actually just be a better version of paste next, or an alternate version of paste next. I might play with that too. Alright, let's just copy a bunch of stuff out of here. Copy you, I 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 copy you, and you, and you, and you, and you, and you, and you. Alright, I go over to Scratch. Alright, it's doing them in reverse order. And there's not much I could do about that. Okay, so here's a cool thing I could do. Combining your idea with what I'm trying to do. Rather than replacing, maybe this is what you were suggesting. We'll keep multi-paste, because that might be a useful one to have around, but I'm going to do like multi-paste interactive. And the way this would work is we would want to base it on, let's see, I need to pull up, yeah, I want to base it on this. So I need, well, I'll skip pulling out the access thing, but point is, first of all, check the clipboard. If the clipboard count looks like that, if the count is greater than, whoops, 0, then we'll get the view that we're currently on. Now, it's not going to look anything like this, where it does all that stuff. The next thing it's going to do is it's going to set a couple of things up. So we have paste count equals 0 or equals 1, and I'm going to want a range equals get a range on the view, but then I want, yeah, I don't really want that. What I want is view get cursor, what is it? Is it just in the view summary? It's been so long since I've done some of this basics. Yeah, cursor. So I want the range min to equal the range max to equal the view cursor position to get things started. And then what we'll do is we don't need a query bar for this. Well, I should probably use one query bar just to give you a prompt. Query bar yeah, so I want to do bar.prompt equals makelet string use up and down to select paste stages. Okay. Now the way this will work is I want to begin a loop in which I get more user input. Should probably do it this way. Get user input, event on any key, and abort on escape. Okay. If we need to abort, then break. We'll grab that just because that's what the other code has for safe measure. Now, if the in.key.keycode equals key up, else if in.key.keycode equals keycode equals key down, else do nothing. Well, no. Else if in.key.keycode equals enter or return or whatever, and then up we'll do minus. We'll do if the paste count is greater than 1 minus paste count. Paste count, clip count. Here, if paste count is less than the clip count, plus the paste count. Finish equals true. Okay. Now what we do is, I guess this would be just break. I don't need to do that. Otherwise, what we do is, if we didn't break here, I'm gonna want a did modify equals false, and these will report whether or not a modification happens by doing that. If we did modify, then what we do is no, this is right. Well, it's okay for paste count to be equal to clip count, because if there are, say there are 10 different things on the clipboard, then our paste count should not be larger than 10. Paste count isn't an index. That's why it's not called paste index. It's a count. I'm not doing exactly what you suggested. As I said, it's a combination thing. You'll see. So the trick here is I want to do it once here. So multi-paste range. Yeah, so the situation is clip count and paste count are both counters, so it's possible for paste count to be equal to clip count. If paste count were 0, then the index, if I had a paste index, then it couldn't exist. If paste count is 1, the paste index can only be 0. Basically, the reason it's confusing is because there's actually going to be 3 different numbers: clip count, and paste index, and we just haven't got to the point where you can see that yet. I think it'll click for you, probably. But yeah, this allows paste count to get up to the size of clip count and no larger, which is correct. App view range paste count. So the way that'll work, it's a little helper, multi-paste range, application links, view summary, yeah, well, the third dimension is only being introduced. I haven't even explained exactly what I'm going for yet. I'm pretty bad at explaining my plans. Range and then paste count. If paste count is greater than or equal to 1, then we can do something. This needs to return a range. Okay, so if we can actually do something, then what we want to do first is come up with an answer for the question in 32, total size equals 0. For int 32 paste index, here's where we start seeing that. Paste index is less than paste count, plus plus paste index. And then what we want to do is what this does here. So it gets the total size plus equals the clipboard index app 0 paste index 0 0. If paste index, well, why don't we just do 1 plus that, and then at the end total size minus equals 1, so that we get rid of the extra. So now we have the total size, and we go look. If the total size is less than or equal to the app's memory size, which is like an old legacy thing that I'm building on top of just because it's the code I'm copying from and that I should really stop doing, but I'm not. Then what we want to do is the string, which originally equals 0, becomes, well, why don't we just like not do that? Okay. Yeah, this whole thing here is silly. This should just be like this. And this should just be like this. Then what I do is I start a second loop. position, and position plus equals that at each stage. And let me pull up clipboard index real quick. So out and length, okay. Out is string plus position. Length is total size minus position. And I add that much to the position. And that is preceded by if the index does not equal 0. We also want to do string position equals the new line plus the position. So that inserts a new line. And what the idea is here is I'm looping over all of my paste indexes in the paste count I was given, from the top to the bottom. But I actually want to flip it now that I think about it. I actually want to do paste count minus 1, while paste index is greater than or equal to 0. Now it's a good thing that I'm using signed counters for this, because greater than or equal to 0 is dangerous stuff, and you got to make sure you're not using unsigned when you write that. But then I can minus my way through this, and if this is not equal to paste count minus 1, then we'll do that. Okay, so paste index is not equal. Then I put in a new line, I read the rest of that in increment. And then, having done all that work, I do exactly as this code right here would do. Get the buffer. Hopefully that gives me a buffer I can use. I should probably check that first, huh? Okay, if the buffer exists, then move ahead. I get all this. And I get all this. So buffer replace range. Okay, the position is the view's current position. No. The position is the range min. Then I write out the whole entire string and the total size is how large that is. I set my mark equal to the position. I set the cursor equal to the position plus the total size. And my finish range gets this new configuration as well. And so what I can really do first of all, I'm replacing range.min range.max. And then I'm getting a finish range, and we're going from the finish range.min to the finish range.max. And then to all the views, I send finish range.min. I send a paste highlight fade thing. So I send that to all the views. Well, I don't send it to all the views, but I should send that to all views. That's what the to do is telling me. Send this to all views to do, not this does. What it does is just send it to the one view. But, you know, such as it is, it's alright. Multi-paste range. So then what I do is I apply the multi-paste range once right there. And then, if I did modify, I do it again, basically applying the same range that was done before with the new paste count, and that should be awesome. Now, if we get to the very end and in.abort is true, then what I want to do is I want to buffer replace range one last time. You know, I'm thinking this really should just take the buffer summary if I was doing this the right way. Because I don't... Oh wait, no, I need the cursors and stuff. I'm lying. So, yeah, in that case, I want to do a buffer replace range, which means I'm going to want you, and I'm going to want you. So I get the view dot, no, that should say view dot, view arrow. There we go. So I get the buffer ID, if I can. I try to replace the range from range.min to range.max with nothing at all, making it as it was when I started. And there we go. Multi-paste range. Okay, why... Oh, did I name it differently? Multi-paste range. What's going wrong here? Oh, Mutley. That says Mutley. Multi-paste range. Need a spell checker someday. And now let's take a look at this. I think this will be pretty cool. So I've combined the idea of getting all of the pasting done in a few commands with the idea of using arrows to navigate the pasting. So hopefully this will be kind of cool, and it should be able to to fix the inversion problem that the other one has. So let me get a list of these things, and I'll just copy out a bunch of good ones. Okay, there we go. Now we take that to the scratch here. I'm going to go Control B, and I can't see the first one because I'm like, you know, not very good at writing code and stuff. That's a bit problematic. Let me turn on that. Yeah, so now you can do up and down to like paste more of the clipboard on. What do you think about that? Control B. Yeah. So that's not something I need to use very often, but once in a while I go like, I wish I didn't have to do this the slow way. So I think that's a pretty cool command. I'm gonna leave it sitting around for a little while, make sure it's all kosher. But I think that satisfies my multi-paste um, needs. So now you're talking about the paste next operator, right, or a command, right? You want to look at the clipboard, and you're saying paste next. Right now, it just always goes to the next one. You'd like to be able to go to the previous or something? That's a good idea, Jim. I want to do that first before we get to these other ones, which are also good ideas. But I want to just fill this up with fluff today. Move lines up and down. So the way the scope stuff works is like this. So you can, in a single key, select a scope, right? So that's the scope I'm in. I just selected it. Go up one, go down one, up, up. Once you've selected a scope, let me find a good example, you can absorb the next statement down. So you can see this isn't just one line. It tries its best to parse an entire statement and move that into the scope. So that absorbs down one. Now it's still missing a lot of features. You'd like for it to be able to like spit out one statement from the bottom of a scope. So for instance, if I wanted to like say select this and then say, okay, that if should actually be outside, so that there's some kind of command that moves the if stir outside, that would be something I haven't implemented yet, but someday I'll fix that up. I'm confident now that I could make a statement parser that would not get confused the way the current one does. It also gets tripped up on a couple other things that show up on unusual occasions. It also has like you can select a scope and then delete the braces while leaving everything else there, which can be useful when you're like, oh, you've got like nested ifs like this that go super deep. So it's like if this, if that, if this, else this, and then like if this, right? You got all this stuff, and you're like, oh, you know what? I actually like, I want this to still be here, but this if this outer if is unnecessary now, and like maybe there's also like A, B, stuff like this. And you go, oh, you know what? Really what needs to happen here is this if just doesn't need to, like, I don't need the, I'm trying to think of an example. Maybe this is not a good way to do this. Let me back up for a second. So the example I saw most recently that was definitely real is you have something like this, and at each stage you're doing like A equals get A, if A, B equals get B, if B, like A B equals get A B. Right, you're in a situation like this, and you're trying to save yourself the work of doing get A. Now, but you also need to like store A, and B all the way till here when you're actually going to do something with them. And then you're looking at your code and you're going, oh, you know what? I should really just get A and B at the same time, so I shouldn't do this. And you're like, I want to get rid of that, and then it's A and B. For whatever reason you want to make that change, that's really helpful in that situation, so you're not ending up like, because the alternative is that you're like, okay, so I need to delete this one, and is, okay, hopefully, like, okay, that one, I hope I got the right one and didn't, like, screw something up, and, okay, and there we go, right? Um, so that's a pretty handy one, too. And that's all that scope manipulation has right now. Auto-accepting to a function is just not simple enough that I can do that right now. So I'm not going to add it to you for that. I'd like to have that feature, but I'm not ready to do that yet. I have to think about it someday and have the right things in place. I don't want it to be a super huge hack, which is what it would be right now. Humongous hack. Alright. So let's do moving lines up and down. Include duplicate line. Yes. So this I want to move to base commands first of all. Wait. Okay. I want this and the comment. Now I want to go to base commands. Line manipulation. So we have duplicate a line, delete a line. Let me make sure everything still builds. Ah, that's why you can't be here, because you're using that. Okay, fine. Stay here then. See if I care. I don't care. But, move line up might be useful for some people. I know a lot of editors have that, so let's do that. Move line up. Custom doc. Swaps the contents of the current line with the line above of the line under the cursor with the line above it and moves the cursor up to the Alright, so you want to get a view and a buffer. We want to get the global partition. We want to begin and end a temp memory. Would have been a perfect time for better paste features. Then I want to get the line string. And then the problem is, how do we want to do this? I want to delete the line where it currently is. I need to get a couple of locations. Basically that location, that location. Alright. So, this is all contingent on if view.cursor.line is greater than 1. Ah, see, this is one of the cases where it doesn't keep working. It can go down to there, but it won't absorb this line here because it's confused by the braces, which is stupid, but I just didn't really know what I was doing when I wrote the first draft of that command. So a little short on time. Let's get these done and get these query selection things done, and then I'll call that a day. So I want to make this not a too long stream today. So we read the line, which means I have everything I need except for a new line character. As demonstrated down there, I can push onto the array an additional character and append onto this string a new line, as long as I increment the memory size by 1, 2. So that gives me the string I want to put in. Now I need to get a couple of locations, so view compute cursor. I need to call this a couple of times. Here's the app. Here's the view. Seek line char, where the line is view.cursor.line -1, char being 1. Prev line cursor. And what I'd like to do is just full cursor, prev line cursor, full cursor, this line cursor, next line cursor. Whoops, phone's ringing. Ignore. No, I said ignore. Okay, there we go. Next line cursor. Prev line, this line, next line. I'll do it this way because it'll probably wrap better. Alright, and just like that, I've got prev line start equals prev line cursor dot position. I'm going to call that position actually. This line position. Next line position. This one's not too hard actually. We can just take this line position and add the line string dot size. And now with those, I should be able to first buffer, replace range. Well, this is all contingent on the assumption that we have success in both of these cases. And again, the absorb down stops working. I buffer replace range. App via the buffer. Did I get the buffer already? There we go. And then we'll start this after we've got the temp memory set up. Okay. So where do I start? This line position. Where do I end? Next line position. And I replace it with nothing at all. We're deleting the current line. Then, if that happened, I attempt to, which it should, actually I should just be able to do this at this point. Line string dot string, line string dot size. That should move it up correctly. Okay, it builds. I'm going to go put this in. I'm going to make the default combining for this, sorry to Miblo, but a long time ago I implemented alt up and alt down as move up, move down by tens, and I never used that, so move line up, and I'll make that move line down when the time comes. Move up, move, oh, that's right, I don't use control up and control down in Mac because they're just broken. You can't do it. So I'll have to make that alt later. Figure out where that lines up and put it in. I'm not going to use shift up and shift down because I'd like to use those for something else. For when I basically, the idea is when I go to implement the Windows-like editing without the editor or the cursor mark style, but the one like Sublime uses. When I go to do that, I want shift up and shift down to not be bound, because I'm going to try to copy over as many of the commands as possible. And so avoiding shift up and shift down would be good. Same thing with shift left and shift right. That's just my thinking, though. Maybe that's silly. Maybe I won't be able to really maintain any of these. I don't know. We'll see. So, move line up. Let's give it a test. A test whirl. I didn't put the cursor in the right spot, and I didn't batch those together very well. Okay. I don't like the feel of that at all. So the problem with it is, one, it doesn't move the cursor up, it moves it down. It did put the thing in the right spot, but that's the line went to the right place. The cursor needs to move up. The other thing is, it undoes in 2 stages since I do it in 2 buffer replaces. So what I should really do is read both of these lines. Yeah, okay, I get it. Goodbye. Yes. Alright, read line, you're out. You're out of the club. You're gone. So I want prev line cursor, this line cursor, and next line cursor after all. Next line, and I'm going to do this differently. You just go away, go away, go away. So we're going to compute each of these and just AND them together. Maybe that's the way I want to format it. Prev line, this line, next line, There we go. And then I want to read those out, so we're going to get int32 length equals next line position minus prev line position. If length is less than, wait, no, if we can get swap push array onto the partition. This is where the temp actually begins. So I want an array of this length, and then we want to read into that with buffer read range. So where is that? Buffer read range. We're going to do 2 buffer read ranges. Buffer. So the output for the first one will be swap. The start will be this line position. The end will be next line position. And that should read in a new line. But I'll have to test this at the end of the file to see how it behaves there, because it might have like a corner case where if at the end of the file it doesn't find a new line for some reason, or it doesn't do next line position quite right, it could have a bug for the very last line of a file. But that should read in, well, we've allocated enough space with 2 new lines in it. That line and that line should both have space for a new line in. Yeah, okay, so that'll work out. It's not a big problem. App buffer prev line position to this line position, swap plus first len. There we go. And if both of these happen successfully, then we can keep going. And we'll have to rewrite this, so that's gone, that's gone. And this line, next line. Alright, so I want int32 first len. Alright, and the length of first len is basically this. Next line position minus this line position. So the length of this line goes there, and so first I read this line into the buffer, then I go to the next character in the buffer and I read in the previous line, at which point I can replace from prev line to next line and put in swap length. Let's see if that's a little better. It probably still will do the cursor wrong, but at least it will get it all in one undo. And that's why I need undo cleanup, which is my next big thing after 4024 comes out. Don't need you. What I need is you. Let's see this. Doop, doop. Hey, it's kind of working. Alright, let me do moving the line down now. And that makes sense that it works because the cursor would be in the replacement range, so it would end up getting moved to the beginning of the first of the lines. Okay. Just to be totally sure, though, I'm still going to set the cursor before we move on. Seek set prefer right. Okay, so seek line char. Please go to prev line 1. True. Okay. So that moves the line up. I'm not sure how move line down is going to look, but I bet it will look similar. So I'm going to copy from there. With the line below it. And moves the cursor down with it. So we get that if view.cursor is less than. Alright, that won't work. What we can do is if so hold on, when I go to do this one, I'm going to want this line, the next line, and the next line. So what I'm really doing is I'm saying move the cursor down one line, swap it up, and then move the cursor down again. Okay, so I've changed my mind. This isn't going to look anything like this. I'm going to just implement this in terms of the other one. So it's still going to look like this, just to make sure we're not spinning our wheels here. If view exists, then get out, or if it does not exist, get out. Moving blocks around is much harder than moving lines around, but yeah, at some point I'd like to be able to swap statements instead of swapping lines, so you can swap blocks and statements, and then be able to do all the various absorb directions as well. Probably moving functions around in a file, as you guys, I think it was as Jim pointed out too, would be useful. Okay, so the idea here is going to be just run a few commands. So we're going to move down, and then I'm going to move the line up, and then I'm going to move down again. You say hack, I say 3-line, wait, I didn't bind that. You might call it a hack, I say it's a 3-line, miracle, maybe? A 3-line time saver. And there we go. Uh-oh. Ah, so there's a problem. I'll have to deal with that. Move up and move down aren't quite right. Alright, so move down doesn't work. I want something a little different. I want move down, but as if there were no like line wraps. So I really want, yeah, let me just make a quick help you here. Move down textual. Well, while I'm here, I might as well just dock the whole thing. Moves down to the next line of actual text, regardless of line wrapping. View set cursor, app, view, seek line char next line 1. Roo. There we go. It even goes through line wraps correctly now. That's good. Just teleporting this line as far down as I can, and whoop. Let's bring it back up. Nope, nope, sorry guys. Hey, excuse me. Pardon me, coming through. Hey, oh. Hey there again. What's going on? Oh, hey guys, I'm back. There we go. Alright. So that gives us those. So that says I'm out of time, but I'm going to stop and do Dowder's request, which is to do these two as well. And then I'll end it. And these are to, well, he only requested this one, but I like to pair it with this one. Alright, so we want, where is my query? This is under search.cpp. You're welcome, Jim. It's a good request. There's a lot of basic stuff that I don't use that I never think of because it doesn't really mean much in my style, but happy to implement those kinds of things. So what we want is I have query replace, right? Is this not where query replace lives? Word complete. List all. This is not the right place. If it's not in search, is it in? No, where is it? Query replace. Command sig. There it is. Base commands. It's in base commands. Oh, finally. Like, it seems like all day, or at least once or twice, I've looked for something in base commands and it wasn't there, and this time it was actually in base commands. It's always fun when something's in base commands because it means you don't even need to be using the default framework. It will work no matter what setup you're using. You can just drop the base commands pack in and get cool stuff. So query replace selection. Custom doc. And incrementally replaces every occurrence of the string found in the selected range with the specified string. Alright, and the way that will work will be a lot like the way this one works. We get both of these. Range equals get range from the view. String query equals wait, I really limited it to 256? That's lame. Well, don't worry about that. I'm just gonna go ahead and go partition part equals global partition global point to viewpoint. Okay. I thought for some reason my brain in the flashes of that identifier, I thought it was saying global point of view. I was like, why is there a thing called that? Begin temp memory. Why do I have a global point of view? It doesn't make sense. Alright, end temp memory. Alright, so we begin and end a temp memory, and that lets us go, okay, length equals range.max minus range.min. Query length. If, char star query space equals push array onto the partition of chars at the length of query length, buffer rearrange app buffer, starting from range.min, going to range.max, filling the query space, which I think is everything I need to say about that, right? Read range. Start, end, out. Okay. And if we are able to do that read, then now is this here really need to be duplicated? Can we not query parameter, query replace parameter, something like this, application links app, string replace, Okay, so then the idea will be that I can take this, query replace parameter, which takes the app and the string that I care about. This should really be called like replace. So here's the replace bar, and here's the thing, we're only going to create this if we need to add a replace query bar, right? Otherwise it'll just sit there and do nothing, and that gets filled with, that gets filled with the replace string. So there's a prompt, there's a replace string, I put it in the replace bar and I start the query bar if they ask me to, and if it fails then like I'm not going to do anything about it. And then what happens is we ask for width, which everyone needs me to do, every version of this. Okay, so then this stuff down here that actually does a query to the user to get the replace string all works in the same way too, except it's query replace parameter, and it takes the app, it takes the replace string, and it does not add a query bar. This one right here does add a query bar, and this one if query length does not equal 0, then it pushes on an array and tries to read it, and if that succeeds, then we can make a string using the replace space replace length, and then we can finally query replace parameter. Here's the app, here's the replace, and true. View. View. We'll just get those again. So, I mean, we're already getting them again. I'm just saying, let's just access open. Now, why am I accessing them protected here? Am I changing which view I'm on? No. Okay, so I feel like this should be access open. Even though I only have to read in this area, I should still be doing that. And then if I don't get a buffer under those permissions, then I'll short circuit there. Right? You need a starting position. Okay, 1 minute, 1 minute. What else do you do with the range? Nothing? Okay. Then start position. View.cursor.position. Range.start. And let's see. Your start position will also be at the... Well, you'll be at range.min, I suppose. I guess that's what this means, actually. Global part. You don't need the partition at all? Is that what you're saying? Oh, I don't have a global partition at this level. Because I'm in base commands. That's why I didn't implement this before, isn't it? Well, that's fine. Okay, so I'm just going to move this into default include since it needs the selection That's what I'll put on the comment. Potentially uninitialized local variable replace. R. Okay, fine. Here's what we'll do. We'll only start the query bar if we need to, but we'll still fill out the memory. Alright, now I just need to take query replace selection, and I need to bind it to something. Okay, so query replace identifier. Is Alt Q available? Yep. So we're gonna copy you to there and use you like that. Test/basic CPP. Alright, I want to replace all of my occurrences of partition with tilde, so Alt Q, with partition without the tilde. Alright, that looks like it's working. Very good. We go here, list all locations of identifier, and then list all locations of selection, custom doc, and this will be the last thing I do today so that I can sign off, eat, and do the last stuff I need to do to make a build ready before the end of tomorrow. Reads the string in the selected range and lists all exact case sensitive matches and all open buffers. Replacing a selection with another selection isn't something I can do right now since I can't query for you to get a second selection. The most I could possibly do is have you copy, like, hit a button to say, like, move this, not copy, but like move this, the current selection into a specialized buffer and then move a second one into a specialized buffer and then execute. But I don't really want to do that kind of thing. It's a bit too hacky for my taste. And the framework's already pretty hacky, but I want to try to avoid adding those things unless they're huge details that make a big difference, rather than like one-off things. Custom command sig list all locations of selection. Okay. List all locations of selection parameters. App. Bool 32 substring. Bool 32 case insensitive. And this will just be list all locations of selection parameters. App. False false. While I'm at it, I might as well make the case insensitive one. Alright, now it's a lot like this. Range, let me pull up include again. So this is going to work a lot like this. Partition, end temp, get the range, replace length. That's going to be the query length now. query space. That's not query replace. It's something more like generic search all buffers. Global general, global part. The string, which just means query, and the flags. There we go. List all locations of selection. Last thing I want to do today. And let's see. So I've done little t, I've done capital T, and alt T does my to do comments. So I can't do that one. List all locations. I also use a bunch of F stuff, right? Control F. Yeah, maybe I want it near there. So Control F does search, Control Shift F, and Alt Shift F. Why not Alt F? That's not very cool. G. Bind mappings. Capital G. Modifier control. List all locations of selection. Yeah, so there's a little bit of inconsistency in the way certain things are handled. So Control X or Alt X brings up this, which is just a query bar, and Control O brings up this, which is a whole different mode. And basically, this whole different mode thing is from old stuff when I thought I was going to do like a GUI thing. Like you can see here that it's no longer looking at a buffer. It's got like this list. It's all sort of made out to look a little nicer and stuff. And I've decided I don't like having to have a GUI subsystem at all, and I'm moving towards eliminating it. So I haven't gone back and made certain things work correctly there, because it's basically like a whole separate code path that I have to maintain every time I do something like add Unicode. And so I just do the bare minimum amount of work. Like when I added the fonts, what I should have done, for instance, when you're editing the size, is make it a little like a field that you can type a number into. But the amount of work it would take to add that to the GUI is not minimal, and I'm planning to delete all of this eventually, and so I don't put any work into it. Now I understand that can be problematic, but I don't know. It's a lot of work for something that isn't even real in my brain. So yeah, once I get off of the GUI and go to complete buffer-driven GUIs, which will basically be my new plan, where you are always looking at a buffer. Even when it looks like a GUI, it's actually a buffer, but it's just the buffer rendering system is making it look pretty. I just, yeah, don't feel like it's worth a lot of time, and it takes a lot of time to fix the GUI stuff, so that's basically all there is to it. Alright, let's try this out. List all locations of selection. Let me go add that to the Mac one too. Command, okay. And now I'm gonna come over here. Test basic. I want to see all occurrences of, I'm going to select partition and Control Shift G. That's not right. Okay, so what went wrong? Let me try one other thing. Memory base, Control Shift G. So that did work. So it might have been the Unicode that went wrong that time. Maybe it doesn't know how to match Unicode characters to each other. Let me try all occurrences of U8 space star. Yeah. Alright, so that seems to be working. There's some kind of bug with Unicode. I'm ignoring it for now. No, I'm looking for Scratch. And that is all I have time for today, folks. Thanks so much for coming and hanging out. I can now check something off my to-do list for the next build, which is add in a bunch of convenience commands. I'll probably not stream again until next week, but thanks for coming and checking this one out today, and I'll see you guys around. Bye-bye.